Welcome to this interview with Victoria Kirby York and the Living With series. I'm delighted to introduce Victoria to you. She is the Director of Public Policy and Programs at the National Black Justice Coalition, which is a civil rights organisation dedicated to the empowerment of Black, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer and same gender loving people, including people living with HIV/AIDS. Dr. York is a highly sought-after public speaker. She's a board member and recognised awarded leader, and she's currently serving as a board member of the Ballot Initiative Strategy Centre, a member of the Presidential Advisory Council for the Search of Common Ground, and is a patient advocate with the Hypersomnia Foundation, particularly in the Diversity and Inclusion Council and also with the Fibromyalgia Network. So welcome, Victoria. Victoria Kirby York, thank you so much for joining with me. I always love talking to you. I'm particularly excited because I get you all to myself today. And the last time I think we met and had a conversation was with the I Have IH campaign, which was really inspiring. But today I get you to share your journey and we can jump into some really important work that you're doing for the community. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it.
I'm excited. I really enjoy having a chance to talk with you. And likewise, I'm excited to have a one-on-one.
So I think it would be really interesting actually if you could just tell us about who you are, where it all started, where you were born, so that our audience has some kind of context before we jump into really specific things about idiopathic hypersomnia and your work and your career.
Sure. So Victoria Kirby York. I was born in Upper Hayford, Oxfordshire, England, to parents who were in the military at the Royal Air Force Base that was there once upon a time. I know now it's been decommissioned, but my childhood kind of took me from there to different parts of the U.S. South. Georgia, Florida, well, technically Maryland, Georgia, Florida, and back to the Maryland, D.C. area when I decided to attend Howard University. So much of my idiopathic hypersomnia journey started at Howard and is often a key part of the story that I often talk about related to my diagnosis. But one of the things I've been reflecting on recently is how advocating for myself, because I needed healthcare, needed to be able to afford the medication that at the time was like $500 a month without insurance as a college student, really began my journey in activism. And so currently I'm the Director of Public Policy and Programs at the National Black Justice Coalition. It's a nonprofit organization that fights for the rights of Black, LGBTQ+ and same gender loving people in the U.S., but we also do a touch of advocacy in other parts of the world as well. And a lot of my journey started in healthcare. First fighting for the Affordable Care Act, then fighting for Medicaid expansion in Florida so that my family and friends could have access to everything that was in the Affordable Care Act law, to then working for President Obama's nonprofit focused on ensuring his legislative agenda. And, now the opportunity to advocate for a community that I care deeply about and have experienced much frustration that often in policy solutions that would greatly impact my community's life the most, often excludes important things that ensures that our community actually benefits from the law. And so working at NBJC was one of the first times in my career that I didn't make a decision solely to continue this quest for healthcare and really addressing more broader issues for one specific community. But I don't know that I would be here today if it wasn't for that idiopathic hypersomnia
Mm.
diagnosis,
Yeah.
really challenging me to speak up for myself and then later for others.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about that, Victoria, because in the context you mentioned college, there was this turning point. Let's give your career, which has obviously evolved from evolved from, your own personal journey with IH. So when did you first feel sleepy?
Oh, yes. So I first felt sleepy. I just turned 19, my freshman year at Howard University, and I was routinely falling asleep in class. And it was something that I'd never really experienced in that way, like this all encompassing fatigue that I couldn't push back against, fight back against, couldn't control.
Mhm.
And after a while of it starting to impact my grades and those assignments, I went up to my Spanish teacher and said to her, I said, Senora, I promise I'm a good student. I've been an overachiever, straight A student my entire life. I don't know what's going on. I love your class. It's so fascinating. I don't know what's going on with me and why, why this happens. And sometimes, I think that I'm still awake and until I realize I've been sleeping. And my teacher pulled me, said, I'm glad you said something. I don't think that it's like you, because when you are awake, you're very engaged. And it's clear that Spanish, both language and culture, something that's really important to you. And getting that, Afro-Latinx experience and knowledge is something you care about. I had a student that had narcolepsy, and that might be what you're experiencing.
Wow.
You should have a sleep study done.
That's
Yeah. And I'd
amazing.
never heard of narcolepsy really before. As she talked about it, I was like, oh, like that Deuce Bigelow, male gigolo. But I didn't know that was a real condition when I watched the movie, to be
Right.
honest with you. Like, so
Right.
when she mentioned it, that was my only context. And that movie
Yeah.
really kind of makes fun of us, right? Like, it's
Right.
not done
It's not
to
done
kind of
well at all.
illustrate a
Right.
loving.
Mm-mm.
It's not done
No.
well. And so, that was
No.
really my only
Your reference point.
experience with the term. Yeah. So initially, I said to her, yeah, I'll go look into that. But because I was doing my own research, looking into it took a little bit until I had a classmate that literally hid about $5,000 worth of camera equipment that I had with me when I was waiting for the metro behind the bench. And I had fallen asleep and had a sleep spell. And she came over and just started shaking me. Victoria, wake up, wake up, wake up. Someone just took off with all of your stuff. And I was a broadcast journalism major. And my heart was just like, oh my God, I don't have $5,000. What am I going to do? And I was really freaking out. And then she said, and that's why you need to go see a doctor. And I
Oh
said,
my
what? I'm
goodness.
still like freaking A, still waking up, and B, like panicking. And so she says to me, your stuff is on the other side of the bench, but
Okay.
you need to go
So,
see a doctor because
wow.
someone could have stolen your belongings for real.
Wow. What a friend.
Or done worse to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So that must have been a
so
real
after
turning
that,
point.
I didn't wait anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the turning point. That was okay, let me do something, because she's right.
Yeah.
Someone could have stolen my things, or someone could have,
Taking advantage of
could
you
have done
or yeah.
anything. So, yeah, taking advantage of me.
So what happened
So,
next?
I started that process to figure out what was going on.
Okay. Where did you land in terms of securing a sleep doctor and a diagnosis?
Yes. So it ended up, not being as linear as I thought. Like, I thought I'd go see the doctor at the student health center and they'd say, here, go take the sleep study. But they wanted to rule out a bunch of other things first. So, and I don't know if that was a part of student health insurance or what, but they first told me I was depressed, and that was what was the cause. And I was like, well, I don't feel depressed. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. So then they ran some more tests and said, well, we think it's probably petite seizures that you're experiencing. And then after a third diagnosis, I can't recall what it was now. I think it had something to do with my heart, maybe. They sent me to the George Washington Hospital Sleep Center. At the time, there were only 2 sleep centers in DC. And so, I went there, met with Dr. Samuel Potolicchio, who is a big person in the field at the time. And, we did the sleep test, and they said I had idiopathic hypersomnia and that I would need to take this medication. There wasn't a generic at the time, so it was going to be $500. My student health insurance didn't cover it. I didn't know that I still had health care under my mom. I hadn't been talking to my mom about this at all because I was embarrassed, that I was not getting all A's in class. B, I wanted to be a big girl, adult proof to her that I didn't need to be in Florida to, be fine in school. So thankfully I did finally talk to her because I was just like, I don't know how I'm gonna pay $500 a month. And when I was able to get on her insurance, the price went down to $60, which was still a lot for a freshman in college.
Yes,
I ended up getting jobs all through undergrad to make sure that I could take care of my health needs. But $60 was a lot more manageable. And that's part of what really got me fired up about the Affordable Care Act was when they were saying, if this bill becomes law, you can stay on your parents' insurance until 26. And I knew I wanted to go to grad school or law school. And so I was like, I need this, So, we worked with other college students across campus to make sure members of Congress knew that young folks needed that provision and we needed the Affordable Care Act. And that was my first real federal policy advocacy. I had done state and local policy as a teenager back home in Florida, but this was my first meeting with the White House, meeting with members of Congress.
Yeah, it just sounds incredible. How did you make that? Yeah, how did you make that leap then from state advocacy to federal level? Because that's big.
Yeah, so it wasn't, I wasn't really thinking about it. I just I knew kind of what were the things that worked when we were fighting for the Hillsborough County Commission to ban indoor smoking. That was the initiative that I was working on in middle school and highlighting the voices of kids. And saying, we don't want asthma, to be worsened or have cancer or all these things because of choices that adults around us are making. And, we did a public education campaign about being underestimated in our middle schools. And it was, the first time that I'd seen not just me taking one individual effort to try to make change, but me plus all these other kids and adults working with us as kids to share our stories with these lawmakers and to say, we've got to get rid of indoor smoking. It's bad for kids, we shouldn't have our lives shortened because of the decisions that adults are making. And so I knew the importance of young people sharing our stories. I knew how often our voices were made invisible in conversations related to healthcare. I knew that Howard and other DC colleges could play a special role because the students are from all over the country in the territories. So, I felt like students in DC were this untapped market to be able to have people that could talk to every single member of Congress and say, this is important to your constituents. And you've got constituents living right down the street in these colleges, who are mailing their ballots back home and will be voting for you or against you, depending on how this goes. And to really put our faces and voices into the conversation. And when I talked about it with folks in the White House, they were like, yeah, we'll come to Howard and talk about this bill. And so, I went from introducing the First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, at an event to talking to her team about the importance of healthcare. And then the next thing I know, we've got this big town hall, with our students, hearing from them hearing from us, and our students getting pumped up to go talk to their members of Congress, about the importance of this bill. And I was invited to the bill signing to watch the bill become law. And sitting there in the audience, I said, I'm going to do everything I can to protect this law. And, my career choices for the next 6 or 7 years was really about that promise, to continue to make sure that the Affordable Care Act continued to help make treatment possible for people, because I knew I wouldn't be able to function,
Right.
let alone work, that all my years of doing well in school wasn't going to matter if I couldn't have treatment that helped to make sure that my quality of life allowed me to.
That's phenomenal. I'm just curious because I remember back in the day, actually, I'm probably older than you, but I certainly remember that shift when, smoking was everywhere in public, and even being in a cinema and it's all completely cloudy and completely accepted, to these really big law changes. But I'm curious, Victoria, when with the Obamacare Act and those changes with affordable care, when did that really shift, and was that an immediate sort of intangible help to you when you sort of were going part the way through that with the signing and so on?
Yeah, I mean, the staying on my mom's health insurance was immediate. So, during that battle, I went from being an undergrad to grad school. I'm getting my master's in public administration. And, the bill was signed into law March 2010. Yeah, I think March 23rd, actually, 2010. And so at that point, I was in my first year of graduate school. And around the time that my insurance was going to be cut off, because under my mother's plan, I was able to stay in as long as I was in undergrad and under a particular age point. And I was getting close to that cutoff point. And I just, I was frantic because I know how I was when I didn't have my treatment. Anytime I lapsed on making sure that I got my prescription renewed, I was remembered just how sick I am when I don't have my medicine, right? And so, I was just like, if it gets like that when there's just a few days between getting it renewed, I don't know what my life would be like, if this bill didn't become law. And then as I told my story, other students told their story, students with physical disabilities, students with sickle cell anemia, and some of these chronic asthma, where if they don't have treatment immediately, when they need it, they could die.
Yeah.
And so, I went from just thinking about it in context of my own experience and feeling desperate to not have my dreams cut short, to thinking about the dreams of all of my classmates and their dreams being cut short.
Yeah.
And so, that really kind of changed the way that and because of the immediateness of the policy too, of that age change, I realized that while some parts of policy can take a lot longer to incorporate, there's still so many states that haven't expanded Medicaid as an example. So there are parts of the Affordable Care Act that still aren't fully realized, that there are some things that can have immediate changes. And I've really dedicated my life to first organizing people, and really letting people know you don't have to be hopeless. There are things we can do to change our realities. It doesn't have to stay this way. To then realizing that there was also a lot of power in being in the decision-making rooms and saying, hold up, you're leaving out some people. Add this sentence in this semicolon, because sometimes the semicolon matters too. And, let's make sure that all of our people are taken care of. And so, I've been digging more into that latter side in this part of my career.
Yeah.
But, that it really illuminated something that that I really needed in terms of just figuring out what I wanted to do with my life at that age.
Mm-hmm. What did that look like for you? You talked about the days where, and we've been through this as well with a family when we've run out of medication and the panic. I mean, it's so distracting. The only thing you can think about is how quickly can we resolve this? And that's hours on the phone. I mean, it's almost a part-time job. What did that look like for you with IH, the difference between being on treatment and not as a student?
Yes. Oh my God. It's like night and day. As a student and as an adult too. Um, when I'm not on treatment, I'm really I'm constantly in and out of sleep spells, but without treatment, I was having 7 or 8 sleep spells in a day. Some short, some much longer, and they're really unpredictable, so it'd go from maybe being 2 minutes and someone not even realizing that I'd had a spell because, if, my head is down, sometimes people didn't even know, to, I'm out, for 45 minutes or 2 hours, and naps for me aren't refreshing at all.
Right.
So sometimes, the recommendations for some sleep disorders are, well, schedule some naps throughout the day. If I take a nap, I'm gone. There is no get up in 20 minutes.
Right.
My body is and then the sleep inertia kicks in,
Right.
where, it's just really hard to get out of sleep. It feels like someone's choking me or holding me underwater, as I'm trying to get up. And, I've tried to create different life hacks, some that work some days, some that don't, to kind of break through when sleep inertia happens. And it still happens with treatment, but much fewer times, and much more manageable. But when I'm not on treatment, there's no way that I would have been able to complete my education. No way that I'd be able to do the job that I do today.
Right.
I get, as I've aged, my brain fog and cognitive function has become more of a problem that I've had to treat. Where I'm talking and then mid-sentence, I've completely lost what it was I was trying to say, or my words get mixed up. And as you age, you also deal with more comorbidities, right? So at this point, I've had a couple concussions, from car accidents. And so what was once a small cognitive problem when untreated becomes a major cognitive problem when untreated, because it's now playing off of other diseases that also have similar impacts, I was recently diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which like fibro fog, that also has cognitive dysfunction. So, it means that my IH symptoms have just kind of shifted in terms of what are the highest priorities for me to treat, because it's really changed throughout my lifespan. And that was something I wasn't prepared for. I thought oh, I've got this down now. I know my routine. I know what I've got to do. The moment I wake up, I need to take my medication. I'm good to go. And it used to be the only medicine that I had to take for a while, but then now, as high blood pressure, all these other things, sleep apnea have entered into my life, I have to deal with side effects and how they work or don't work together, and figuring out what's going to be the best medication to continue with. And that's something, again, that I wasn't prepared to manage. I really felt okay, I'm good, I'm on a roll, until I wasn't. So yeah, those are just kinds of the different parts of my journey. It also means that workplace accommodations or accommodations in school also shifts depending on these other factors, right? So, those are accommodations with loved ones, what you have to be able to be proactive about to say and remind people. Sometimes I feel oh, I shouldn't have to say XYZ. I have IH. So if I say I'm not well enough to drive and can't make it to your party, you should know I love you and would be there, but can't, because it wouldn't be safe for me. Right.
Right.
Sometimes I have to remind myself, people aren't going around remembering, oh yeah, Victoria has IH, and thinking about it all day. Like I'm thinking about the fact that I have IH all day. And so I do have to be proactive and remind people, or else folks get in their feelings and they're just like,
Yeah.
you're being a bad friend or sister or whatever. And it's just like, no, I'm
Partner.
just sick.
Yeah.
And you
And I
forget
think
that I'm sick because I treat it.
Yeah, it's so helpful because I think we always talk about accommodations in academic settings and in the workplace. And I know you and I have talked about this before, but it was super helpful to talk about accommodations at home and in relationships. Can you speak to that a little bit more on how you've navigated that? Because I think that would be really helpful for people to hear.
Yes. That's become like a more recent, in part because of our conversation, and it really being able to better name it, right? Because before you experience it with your loved ones, where you're just like, they have expectations for you to do certain things that you think you'll be able to do, you hope you'll be able to do, but in the back of your mind, you're like, I'm not going to be able to do that at 8 o'clock. My brain is done for, right? But you like hope. I hope I'm going to be able to do it. I want to be able to do it, instead of saying, if I'm well, at 8 o'clock, I will do it tonight. And if I can't do it tonight, I'll knock it out in the morning for you. Right. And setting those expectations that it's like, it's not that I don't think it's a priority. Right. But those were things that I had trouble naming for a while.
Articulate.
Like, just like at work, I need certain accommodations. That at home, it might be, I can take care of our child probably more often than not during these times of the day, but after like 7:30, if I'm with the kid and we're doing things, if you expect me to get that child in bed by 8:30 and I'm struggling my own, tiredness, my medication has run out for the day. I'm dealing with regular likelihood of sleep spells. She might be up until 11 o'clock watching TV because I've had a spell. I am out. There is no having her go upstairs to brush her teeth, right? So there's some first honesty and vulnerability that I have to have for myself to say, okay, as much as it saddens me that I can't be consistent in this way, I have to name it, right? And then I have to name connected to it what's the ask that I have of my loved ones. Because I can't expect them to read my mind and know what my body needs. I have to be able to communicate that.
Right. And as you said, it changes. So I think the expectation is that in a family, we know each other so well, but that sort of day-to-day change where actually today it just looks different and I can't load the dishwasher or I'm not going to be able to stay up, as you say. So that sort of daily articulation, and maybe we should call them, I don't know, accommodations at home or something, but it is a thing, isn't it? And the focus has been in other areas, in the workplace, in school, and certainly our previous conversations really resonated that sort of, we really need to communicate with our loved ones that this is what my capacity is. And as you said, to be vulnerable and honest, it's so hard to do that really on a daily basis.
It can be painful, right? Because there are things you really want. Like my daughter asked me yesterday if I could take her to the park. And I was just like, I want to, but I'm struggling to finish this last hour of work because I work at home. That's one of the accommodations that I have and did before the pandemic. And, my reality was I can't leave the house after I do this next hour. I'm going to struggle to get through what I need to get through today. It's going to get done. By the time I'm done with it, I can't safely take you somewhere where there are going to be strangers I don't know who could run off with you, and my reaction time isn't fast enough, or if I have a spell at, sitting on the bench while you're playing with other kids and my eyes are no longer on you, I can't risk that. And so, that makes me sad because I always thought I'd be that park parent that took the kids to the park all the time. I like to be I'll start up a game of tag. So make sure my kid, can play with these other kids, and I can't always be that kind of, and then when I am, because of other conditions like fibromyalgia interplaying with the IH, um, you know, it means that I won't have the energy to do much anything else when I get back from the park.
Mm.
Sometimes a shower is hard, right? Let
Right.
alone showering her and me.
Right. Yeah, you have to choose. um,
Hmm.
your character is so infectious and energetic. It sort of seems to play at odds with someone who struggles with sleep. How does that work when you're interacting with people? Because to look at you is like this woman has so much energy and she's so electric and on fire, and yet this doesn't quite square that what she's really saying is she's extreme, beyond sleepy. She's clinically tired. How do you communicate that given your natural sort of exuberance and personality?
Yeah, I struggle with that a lot. Um, because people expect you to show up a certain way when you
Uh-huh.
don't. They
Right.
have a lot of feelings. That's really about them and not about me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like when they see that you're well treated in terms of medication and you are able to be who you are naturally in the world. And they don't always see the bad days because again, I work from
Mm-hmm.
home and I choose when I go out,
Right.
right? So they don't see the moments, you know, that I don't that's not safe for me for them to see often. They might receive the sorry I can't talk or the straight to voicemail, right? That's their
Mm-hmm.
experience of it. But that doesn't give them the experience of I can't follow what you're saying. I'm in and out of our conversation. I've had a spell 3 times and don't
Mm-hmm.
really remember everything that you're talking about at this point, but I'm embarrassed to say that. Right? Um, they're not experiencing um, those moments because I
Right.
pressed the do not answer.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not experiencing that. They're only experiencing when I answer the phone and am, fully in control of my body.
Yeah, you've obviously
They're
like
for
really
the most part not seeing me out. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, you've really got very clear boundaries and incredibly self-aware. What sort of tools and steps did you learn along the way? You've talked about hacks a little bit before, but to get to this point, and what would you recommend to people who perhaps not quite where you're at in terms of communicating their needs?
Unfortunately, I had to learn the hard way. Um, I had 2 back-to-back car accidents that
Access.
resulted in they were like within a month of each other, the concussions that I referenced. And while I don't believe it was a sleep spell, I was having there's another term that I didn't know how to name actually until I got more involved with the Hypersomnia Foundation. And I was like, that's what that was. So everyone's like, did you fall asleep at the wheel? No, I was awake. I promise. But I realized then that like even if I think I can push through, that I really just I have to make smarter
Right.
decisions about when I do get in the car.
Mm-hmm.
That might
Mm-hmm.
mean I sit in the car, which I do often. I'll just be in the parking lot,
Nap.
until I'm okay to
Yeah.
drive. But that I really had to start making that call after those accidents because my brain can't handle another concussion.
No.
I
No.
don't want to see the level of cognitive dysfunction I have to battle through if that happens. So I was really forced. The other thing happened, I was working on the Amendment 4 battle in Florida in 2018, and my daughter was 1 years old at the time and was in the stroller with me, and I was working outside of a polling place, and it was an early voting period. I had really bad sleep inertia that morning and probably should not have gotten in the car um, to go to the early voting station, let alone bring my 1 year old with me.
Mm.
But I felt like, my coworkers had seen me have a spell before in the office. I knew that this particular set of coworkers had my back. So I went. But everything that I was really worried about, but didn't listen to my body because I was the leader. right? I'm the director. This is my team. And I want to show up as a good general, who's out there in the battlefield, making sure that we pass Amendment 4 and returning citizens had the right to vote,
Yes.
right? The largest
Yeah.
increase of the franchise since the women's right to vote constitutional amendment. Like, I really, wanted us to be able to highlight Black LGBTQ returning citizens and have those important conversations. The reality was I should have stayed home. I ended up having multiple sleep spells while I was there and have my daughter in the stroller. And then it meant that my coworkers had to take on the burden of not only doing their job, but keeping an eye on my child, which was really an unfair position.
Right.
And to look after me too, right? Like, to make sure that no one was, taking advantage of me. Some folks were worried. They're like, oh my God, is she, make sure no one's calling the police or ambulance and creating a bigger scene that needed to happen. And when really I should have just made the decision to stay in our supporter housing,
Right.
And so after that, I became really clear that for myself, for others, for my child in that situation too, that if I need to follow what my body says and not what my ego might say or like my fear around how people might perceive me.
Yeah,
And
expectations.
so I hope that folks listening take away from it. Don't wait till the worst happens. Prevent the worst from happening.
Even if you're the general, or especially if you're the general, perhaps. But yeah, the reality of driving is
But then
really
it sets a bad example for them around self-care.
Right.
Like, they should also make better decisions about their own health. And if they see me working through, it's how we perpetuate the cycle of people putting the work and the hustle above their own health and well-being. Because when we die, the job is going to replace you in like 2 weeks to 2 months, right? No matter how amazing you were, right?
It's so true, but it's also so bleak.
You have to take care of yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's such a it is a reality. It's such a good reminder that our self-care also permits others to do the same. And in leadership, the kind of leadership role you're in, I would imagine that's extremely important. But it sounds like you had a hard journey to that point.
Yeah, there were times when working on the Obama campaign, I didn't leave our field office until 2:00 in the morning. Excuse me. Inputting data, around to ensure our voter registration papers followed all of the legal, requirements. If we were missing, a signature or a date or something, that we had our list of folks that we needed to call back and make sure that they knew their registration wasn't complete. They needed to come take care of it, etc. And, I probably should have just stayed the night in that office at that point instead of trying to drive across the bridge to get home, right? Like, the smart thing for me to have done was to have a pillow and a mattress
so
set up in the office, or to leave, earlier, period.
Yeah. So what are the workplace accommodations like in the White House then, Victoria? Because it's not sounding too good.
Yeah. So that was the re-election campaign. And so, that was, again, me wanting to show the team that I was putting in the work that I expected them to do. So if I had forms that needed to be data entered, I couldn't tell them that it was required to have their data in within 48 hours, and I wasn't following suit. So instead of asking for help, which is what I should have did, right? Recruiting more volunteers. In that instance, I was like, I want to show leadership. So I'm going to do these so they can see my name was next to it. Victoria inputted this. And, she's not asking us to do anything that, she hasn't done herself.
Yeah.
And while I think that helped in the leadership dynamic with my team was one of the best in the country, and won a very difficult competitive area to win. I don't think that they also needed to see a leader who knew how to put boundaries in place for self-care, right? I didn't do any of them any favors by not showing them how to also do that you can be a good leader and take care of your body.
Right.
And so, those are the kinds of things, in terms of accommodations, in the campaign space back then, there really weren't accommodations, not just for President Obama, but just in general, electoral campaigns are a 18-hour day sprint to election day, right? So I really do think that that's a beautiful change. It's a change that I wish I had more to do with.
Mm-hmm. What are challenges that you're facing now in the workplace, in your role, in your leadership role?
I really think probably one of the biggest challenges is what you lifted up about the difference between my personality and my like physical reality. Because I present and always have since I was a kid, like, you know, it's just who I am. I'm a very energetic, you know, human being. When I was a
Exuberant,
coach
yes.
in high school, I was a recreational leader at the local parks and rec. And my kids, my third, fourth, and fifth graders called me Coach Cheetah, like the cat, you know, because I was fast and always had a lot of energy, right? And that was one of the things that made it so jarring when I was a freshman and trying to figure out what was going on, was that the sleep spells and the sleep inertia, and just kind of the kind of confusion that follows when you're like, I don't know what just happened. You're trying to resume your life and periods of time have gone missing.
Right.
How I felt in my body was so at odds with how I am when I'm not battling sleep. And so the challenge in the workplace is that I can look very normal to people. I might even sound really normal to them. In my head, I can feel the difference, right? Like it's like a person coming back from having a stroke. Some folks say, well, you sound really good. And to them, they're like, no, because like normally my brain and my mouth work immediately. And right now it's taking me a lot more to think and connect my brain to my mouth than normal. Like in your body, you feel it in ways that the people you're talking to just feel like you're talking slower, like, you know, for pronunciation versus like I'm slower because my brain is not working right now.
Right. Yeah, that just speaks to the invisibility, the challenges around living with an invisible, essentially, unless someone's going to see you fall asleep. But even that doesn't speak to what's going on interiorly, as you said. Yeah, are you talking about brain fog? Let's just talk about brain fog for a minute, because I think it's one of those really impacting aspects of IH that's somewhat neglected, or at least difficult to articulate. What's your experience with brain fog?
Yeah, for me, it's especially if I'm in one of those periods where there's something going on with my insurance and CVS and my doctors, which delays getting my refill, which happened last week, right? Made last week very hard for me. You know, brain fog is sometimes like I'll forget things. I'll forget to write down something so I don't forget things, right? So like I say yes to a calendar appointment, and normally like if my brain is working, that calendar appointment is like made, or I ask my assistant to make that calendar appointment. Brain fog, I'm like, oh wait, what am I supposed to do? What was I doing? I was doing something. I don't remember the last conversation. What was I just talking about? Now I've got to go backwards in time, look at past emails, look at who did I just call? Who was I talking to? It almost kind of, my grandmother is going through dementia right now. And when she talks to me about her experience with dementia, there are times where I'm just like, yep, I completely relate, because some of the things that she says, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I'm going through that right now at 36 years old, right? The difference is it's not every day or all day in the way that it might be for my grandmother or people living with dementia. But it kind of makes it even harder for people because they have the expectation that your brain is the same as it was an hour ago, right? So they're like, an hour ago you did X, Y, and Z just fine. So like, why can't you do it right now? It's just like, brain is operating differently right now. I have no idea what we just talked about. And if I'm going into a sleep spell, which they might not know because I'm working from home and, you know, just trying to do the best I can. It might be that I didn't even write it down clear enough because my handwriting has started to get, really bad, because I'm starting to
Interesting.
go into the
Yeah.
spell. And so it's like, oh shoot, what do I need to, I need, need to figure out how to get back on track. Or sometimes it's the example that I give that's kind of more comical is, I go to get microwavable to be heated up in my microwave. And instead of putting it in the microwave, I put it in the freezer. Put it in the refrigerator, next to the freezer. And then I come back downstairs an hour, 30 minutes later, sometimes an hour later, because I forgot that I had already made provisions for lunch. And then I'm like, wait a minute, what happened? It should be nice and cold and in the microwave, but cold, but having been heated up. Then I go in the refrigerator and I'm like, wait a minute, why did I put it in the refrigerator?
Still
that makes absolutely no sense.
No sense. Yeah.
My wife might be like, why did you put this random thing that shouldn't be in the refrigerator? Well, I didn't realize that's what I was doing, right? If I knew I was putting a shoe in the refrigerator, do you think I put a shoe in the refrigerator? No. But I look normal, right? So it looks like she must have intentionally did it. Yeah. She must have intentionally put that shoe in the fridge or put that microwavable in the fridge and not in the microwave. And it's like, no, I didn't intend to do that. I was going through brain fog, right? And so it's like really needing people to give me grace. And if you see that I messed up, let me know, because it's likely I have no idea. I don't know what I did.
Yeah.
Don't assume that I intentionally made this choice to hurt you for some reason or to, mess up your shoe. That was not what I was trying to do.
I think it's amazing. You bring such humor to really, really difficult and complex issues that are deeply personal. So that's very striking, Victoria, and you're incredibly inspiring. And I wanted to thank you for this time to share. And my last question actually is, what do you feel for the IH community? What do you think is working well, and what do you think is lacking?
Yeah. I think the one of the things we have to do is begin to tell our stories more. Especially as, I imagine we're going to receive more people with IH diagnosis in the coming months and years because of long COVID and the fact that folks don't know what's causing it. And because of that, the symptoms are being addressed piecemeal. So if a person comes in saying they're experiencing extreme fatigue and they have that sleep test, it could be that the same thing that's causing IH is also what's causing whatever's happening with this person with long COVID. Who knows? No one knows, because the data's not there. And so as we tell our stories, hopefully people who need access to a sleep doctor need to know that it exists, right? Like in the way that I didn't until that Spanish teacher said something. We'll hear those stories. We'll ask the right questions. We'll get the right tests. We'll hopefully get a treatment plan that works for them. And so us sharing those stories are important. And I know it's hard because it feels stigmatizing. I get scared every time I tell my story that a future employer will say, I just saw this video. She got IH. She's dealing with these symptoms. It's an overcorrect for what they hear. And what I really want people to hear is knowing about it allows folks to ask for the right accommodations. It allows for folks to set the right expectations. It allows for folks to get the right treatment so that you can have a quality of life where, I can be who I am and not the zombie I turn into when I don't have, my treatment. I think the IH community, we also have to do more political public policy advocacy. There's a lot of funding being poured into discovering other conditions that have fatigue as a symptom. And also, there's a lack of knowledge about what's causing it. And we need to make sure that IH is included in all these conversations so that if there is medication that comes out of those processes, we can be included in what the FDA says these treatments can address. that we're being included in the way that the
Right.
clinical trials are being designed, that lawmakers, when they're creating the bills to fund these projects, are thinking about us and including us. And that
Hmm.
requires a lot of education of members of Congress, members in government, et cetera.
Mm.
Um, and, we need more treatment options, again, because of, the life
Yeah.
cycle. Comorbidities happen. And so, I could take modafinil for, the last 10, 15 years. And then there were periods where it didn't work for me. And so now I'm on
Right.
Sunosi, right? Or, you know,
Yeah.
um, there was a period of time, I tried Adderall, but that didn't help me, right? But I have these other
Mm.
medications now that I have to take for other health challenges. And a big worry is, well, what happens if I have to choose between being able to not have the sleep, the IH symptoms, and not having a heart attack,
Mm.
right? Or choosing between addressing the IH symptoms and not having, pre-diabetes run
Pain.
away with me and become
Yeah.
a diabetic,
Right.
right? Or all of these
Yeah.
things. So the more options we have, the more we can continue to function in our families and our communities and
Mm.
continue to work. And yeah, so we have to be involved in that process.
Yeah, and join. Yeah, you're right. As a sort of a community with this, as we all do, with a sort of a diagnosis that's tangible and, for want of a better word, a label. But actually, a better approach probably is for us all to come together on a symptom level. So, in this case, excessive daytime sleeping, regardless of the diagnosis, whether that's, as you say, COVID or IH or dementia, Parkinson's, so on and so forth.
One of the things that's been fascinating as a person recently diagnosed with fibromyalgia and really trying to figure all that stuff out. Um, MECFS is a very similar disease. Like the symptoms are almost 100% matching, except for one, the pain is worse, and one, the chronic fatigue is worse, right? And watching those patient advocacy communities with long COVID, there's data that supports that people with long COVID, 30% end up with MECFS, and like different 30% end up diagnosed with fibromyalgia, right? But MECFS community has been really active in trying to be incorporated in all of the long COVID research. And so they made the decision that they were like,
Mm.
we're going to make sure that we're able to figure out what's the root cause, what's the reason behind this disease, leveraging the money that's coming in for long COVID. Some of the fibromyalgia groups I've been associated with made the decision that they didn't want to be lumped in. And I
Mm.
think that
Interesting.
they're the worst for
Mm.
that decision. I really do.
Yeah.
Because we
Yeah.
missed out on some really big opportunities to figure out the reason, potentially have a cure, potentially,
Mm.
have better
Access to
treatments,
medication. Yeah. Yeah, I think that speaks to
increase
how
visibility
important it is to
even.
be collaborative. Yeah, raise awareness, be collaborative, all of those things. Well, I'm hopeful for the hypersomnia community, and really
Me
honoured to
too.
have
Y'all
had
are
this
doing
time with
amazing
you.
work. Let
You're
me tell you,
such a
the Hypersomnia Foundation, it's
yeah,
completely
thank you.
given me a new perspective on patient advocacy organizations, just being a part of the Diversity and Inclusion Council, helping out with some of the website redesign
Mm,
stuff. I've really had an opportunity
hmm.
to meet different members of your team, different volunteers engaged. And I really think, we're small but mighty and brilliant. Like the stuff that comes out of
Yay. I
people's,
think so.
in our
Yeah.
conversations, I'm just like, wow, and so as,
Yeah.
the Hypersomnia Foundation grows and, volunteers get more plugged in and do even more,
Yeah.
I'm filled with so much hope for the direction of our
Yeah.
community. And I'm really grateful for your leadership.
Yeah, thank you. I think these are really exciting times in terms of the community kind of coming together, patients finding their own voice, opportunities to engage with clinical trials right across the board, and of course, all hopeful for better medications, better disease understanding, and for all those people out there with IH but don't know that they have IH. Thank you for your time, Victoria, and for spreading your light and energy and exuberance. It's infectious. So I'll take some of that away with me this evening. And I hope to see you really soon, hopefully this year.
Yes, I look forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you too. You too. Thank you.